joining us on this episode of Bold as Brass. This is part of our 12-hour podcast-a-thon. By this point, it will be about 1 p.m. So if anyone's stuck with me so far on this 12-hour journey, well done. If you are coming in new to this discussion, congratulations, you have joined the madness. So as lots of you know, I'm running the 12-hour podcast-a-thon as a fundraiser to hopefully help me travel out to Texas to go to the International Women's Brass Conference this year. So I thought it would be pertinent as part of the podcast-a-thon to tell you a bit about the IWBC, but that's really not my place. So I'm thrilled to be joined by Joanna and Lauren and Stacie, who are hopefully going to help me tell all of you a little bit more about the IWBC and why I want to end up there. So first of all, I'm going to come to each of you in turn so that you can say hi and introduce yourselves and let us know what your involvement with the IWBC is. So Lauren, I'm going to come to you first.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having us on today, and we're so excited to have you at the conference. Bold as Brass podcast is just such a strong supporter of IWC, and we are such a big fan of all the work that you're doing and the amazing artists that you feature. So thank you so much. My name is Lauren Rudzinskis. I am a trombonist. I'm also the general manager of IWBC. So I do a lot of the behind the scenes sort of things, getting things going. And I'm so glad to work with this amazing team of musicians and really talented people. So I'll turn it over to them. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Well, at this point, Lauren is basically a Bold as Brass veteran. I think this must be your 4th feature on the podcast. So thank you so much for...
You can't get me away.
Well, for always giving me the time. I'm very, very grateful. So Joanna, I'm going to come to you next.
Hello, everyone. And hello, you all. I am coming at you today on a rainy afternoon in North Carolina. I am at my studio at the University of North Carolina at Pembroke, where I am professor of tuba and euphonium. I do play trombone as well, although not as well as any of you all. Now, I have been lucky enough for the past almost 6 years to serve as president of the International Women's Brass Conference. And before I was president, I was chair of the awards committee. That was how I first began to work with the IWBC, because I love all things historic, and especially women who have made their marks in history. So that was really my first coming on. And I was lucky enough to be at the very first IWBC when Susan Slaughter had the idea.
Wow.
Completely back at the beginning. I had just joined the United States Coast Guard Band, and I went and did a performance with an all-women, all-military tuba euphonium quartet. And so
cool.
I was on the ground at that very first one. And when Susan Slaughter offered me the chance to lead the organization, that was really a full circle moment for me, having been there as a young musician just starting out. And then now here I am many years later, almost 30 years later, getting to lead the organization. It's really very special.
Wow, I'm realizing at this point already how much I'm going to be a very small fish in this pond in this discussion, because I'm not going to have anywhere near as much to do as all of you are going to have to do at this event, which is amazing. I'm excited to hear more about it. So Stacie, welcome. This is your first time being involved with anything Bold as Brass, so we're super excited to have you here. I'll hand over to you.
Yes, hi. So my name is Stacie Mickens, and I am at the University of North Texas as Associate Professor of Horn. And my first involvement with IWBC began in 2012, although I had heard of it for a few years from other members and was really excited about something so cool. And I started out more as an attendee and competing in like the mock auditions and the solo competition. And I just remember that very first one, 2012, was Western Michigan, hosted by Lynn Folk and Deanna Svoboda. And I just remember it felt like the most welcoming, coolest convention I'd been to for brass playing. And everyone was so friendly, even like the greats. They would see you in the hallway and they would ask if you're having a good time and if you needed anything. So my capacity with this upcoming 2022 convention is as a co-host, and it's sort of a position that I inherited by way of becoming the teacher at University of North Texas. My colleague Natalie Mannix, who is one of our trombone faculty, is actually, I would say, the main host because she was the one who put a bid in to host it, and she is a organizational mastermind, I have to say. She's really on top of things. And along with Natalie Mannix, my other female brass teaching colleague, Rachel Semayoa, who's also been a member of IWBC for a long time and a past host of an IWBC event. The three of us together are hosting this event at the usually warm University of North Texas. It'll be pretty warm in May. And yeah, I'm really learning a lot in the process as sort of the newest member, I would say. And the team behind it is amazing. Like Lauren, Joanna, everybody does so much, the board. So thanks for having me on the podcast.
Not at all. Well, this very much is my first rodeo. And so hopefully I've got questions that maybe people that are catching up with this video also have. So hopefully my ignorance, folks, will be helpful to you on this occasion. So my sort of first question is, if anyone's coming to this having never heard of IWBC, firstly, I question from what rock they are crawling out under from. But can anyone give us a bit of an overview of how it came to be in existence and why it was a necessary organization to set up?
Shall I take that one? So we have to think back, and it's hard for us to imagine 30 years ago without phones everywhere and without the internet being in everyone's pocket. The networking aspect for all people was so much different. And Susan Slaughter was playing in the St. Louis Symphony, and she knew she had colleagues that also were female that were playing brass instruments, but this was not something easy like today we can make a Facebook group or have a podcast. And so she decided that it would be really nice to gather everyone together. And she thought, we could provide role models of all types of players, all genders, and bring people together, but just make sure that it feels very welcoming, and that maybe there could be a newsletter where we could share the activities of women. This is, again, pre-social media, pre the internet. And so she decided that she would gather together and host and welcome everyone. And she made a point of making it international. She made a point of having men there. For example, Arnold Jacobs and Jean Pokorny were both at the first one. So on my tuba side, it was amazing. And those were her connections, right, that she had. So she really just wanted to make gathering spaces for networking. And she thought competitions would be a great way for, as an educator. And that was how it began, the sense that we might be, and especially then, but even now, we might be more in smaller groups and not as connected. Also, the organizations at that time had very few women represented. Things like ITG or ITEA. And so she wasn't able to go to the ITG and meet a whole bunch of other women trumpet players on the artist lineup back then. So she decided she would jump in and made it, she's the dynamo that she is, she made it a welcoming space. And after the first one, she thought, well, I don't know, maybe we could do another one. So then it became, and so Stacie here is speaking to us from Texas, where she's continuing on that long line of just making spaces, like you're doing with this podcast, Melissa, making spaces for these conversations, which is, I think, what she would tell us her hope was.
Mm-hmm. And do we think then the objectives of the conference are pretty much the same nowadays, or do we think we've sort of, times move forwards a little bit? Have we got different objectives with it now?
And I'll start it, but then I think it's interesting. I think that what I would say to that is the music business has changed a huge amount in 30 years, right? When Susan Slaughter was teaching her students in 1985, they were just going to go play in an orchestra, and that was the extent of it. And now the world is totally different. So the things that we offer, or that I would want Lauren and Stacie, you to both speak to this too. I would say, though, from my position as a professor, my students, they need to see things on musicians' health. They need to see things on music business. The things that we're now incorporating, they've always been there. There was a pregnancy and brass playing seminar at the very first one, right alongside one on doing your taxes. I remember that because that seemed it was just mystifying. So So it's, I would say that maybe what people need has expanded. What do you all say to that? Lauren, do you want to take a stab at that first? I'm
Yeah,
curious
I
how you,
think
yeah.
that's perfect. Yeah, and as someone who just recently started compiling all of the presentations and seeing the amazing things coming in, I think that's one of the things that makes us so special is that there are unique topics that you will only hear at an IWBC. We've got something all about women's health and coming out. We've got all kinds of wellness topics. We've got everything in terms of different like playing styles and groups and ensembles. And I think one of the really cool things that you'll see at this upcoming conference that's been a huge priority for us is a real focus on expanding our diversity and inclusion. So you're going to see all kinds of brand new repertoire. We have these new group recitals, which are great because people can come. Maybe they don't feel up to doing a full recital, but they want to share this one new piece that they commissioned or showcase this composer who's doing great works. One of them is a Barbara York tribute recital, which we're really excited about. Wonderful woman and huge IWBC supporter. So I think just in general, you're going to see a lot of new initiatives that help us move into this world that we're all trying to improve upon in the community. We want to make this a more inclusive, welcoming space, and this conference is definitely going to do that. We've got just incredible guest artists. There's so many of them. I don't even think we have time on this podcast for me to go through and tell you all about all of them. But so many amazing. And on top of the guest artists, the presenters who are coming are also top of their field in their research and their performance. So there's just going to be so many incredible things. And I was mentioned before with IWBC, it's a totally different vibe. So you're going to go to this conference, you're going to be walking down to your next session. You're going to sit down next to some really famous musician who, I have my own experiences with this at past conferences, and you're just going to chat about the day or get some advice on your career, whatever it is. Like, there are so many stories. Everyone who comes has that experience, that story. So it's really a different conference. And we're so excited about these new initiatives and also just keeping the vibe the same, because that's been such an important part, the support that this organization provides and will continue to do so.
I'll jump in just with another slightly different perspective too. Based on Melissa's question, has the mission or focus changed? And just since my interaction with the organization has changed from attendee to recitalist to co-host, when I first heard about it, it sounded really cool, and it sounded kind of like, all right, so like just women players, like, and I think it could be very easy for people to think, oh, well, are men allowed to come to this? Yes, yes, absolutely. As Joanna was saying, we want men there. I mean, that's also part of the mission, and it's not, I guess what amazes me and how it's evolved too is it's not just about featuring great women players, it's also about featuring great composers. It's also about featuring ensembles and these topics. And I am sure Lauren will talk about this a little bit too, maybe like the new like ensembles like the Chromatic Brass Collective. And I remember, unfortunately, I didn't get to hear this performance, but the Sean Kennedy performance from last time, I can't remember what it was called, but it sounded so out there. And so just the welcoming of the, other minority categories, not just women. And also the focus on like students, I think is really huge too. So I know there's some good buzz here at UNT among our students as well. And I think that's one thing like the competitions really try to promote as well. So I do feel like the focus still is true to its probably original mission, but I feel like the organization is able to sort of sweep up some more topics, and we're well poised for that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that all of you in your answers have reminded everyone that it's rightly just about creating the most inclusive space for brass players, and that's it. It's not women brass players, and it's not brass musicians and not composers. It's there for everybody, and I think that's really, really important. So Joanna, I know we talked about this a little bit in your episode, and I wonder that again, possibly everyone's got a little bit that they can chip in on this. How do you go about choosing your hosts, and how have you dealt with any concern about the location of this year's conference? Now that I realize that the way that I've asked that, like some sort of newscaster, makes me sound like I'm pointing any fingers. Anyone that hasn't listened to Joanna's episode, we have discussed this at length, and that's not what I mean by that question at all. I just wonder, on your experience of that, how's that been to go about dealing with?
No, this is great because it's a really nice conversation I think we're all having in the field. When you host an event, do you want to do it at a convention center? Like some of our North Carolina Music Ed or the ITGs, are we thinking a convention center is best? That's one model, right? Or do we go with the university, which has been the model that Susan Slaughter started with? She did it at Washington University right away, and then you have all of the pianos and everything. So I personally love targeting universities still, because then you get the different people. And so what I've sort of hoped we'd still do is look at the university system, both overseas and in the US. And then there's an application process. So just side note, if anybody listening wants to host, we would love that. You can get in touch with me directly and I'll put you in touch with a packet. So there's a packet with a questionnaire and things, how much space have you got, what halls do you have, and all that, and the tech side, and so anybody can apply to host. And it doesn't have to be somebody who's currently a member. It can be somebody who's new to the organization. And so my view as president has been this sense of looking at our network of universities where we have faculty doing great work already, and then using one of those as a spot to gather. Mm-hmm. It is nice when they're somewhat central, like the Midwest. That has been done several times. That's why St. Louis was good when Susan started out. And then we have thought, just, to answer your question, when we did Arizona State, we thought, well, we haven't been as far west as that. So Arizona State felt like a good choice. This now at Texas is really great because we know there's such a center there of brass music and music making where Stacie is. And this idea that, well, we're going to look to our leaders, people like Stacie and Natalie and Rachel, who are there doing amazing work, boots on the ground, and then coming in to support and expand their voice. So every now and then, if there's a sense of, oh, well, maybe a certain area shouldn't get support from the IWBC, we think of it as the people on the ground, the people and the students at the university where we're coming in to host, and those are who need to be uplifted. We bring judges and pianists and funding from all over that can really help those students shine. And so we're concerned with wanting to make sure it's easily accessible for people and that it has enough space in hotels and things like that. But again, anybody out there who wants to think ahead, we have a future planning committee who is looking at next sites now.
Great. Did anyone else want to grab a second on that? No, Joanna's been so comprehensive. Good at answering questions, Joanna.
I'm in my professor mode. I'm in my office. Sorry.
So I'm curious then. I've been seeing, because, when I do things for Boulders Brass, I basically set up camp on Instagram, and that's where I live now. This house, you see, one, it's not my house, I should clarify, but two, I don't live outside of Instagram at the moment. So I've been seeing everyone's wonderful celebratory, like, we've been accepted to present, or we've been accepted to do this. You must get so many submissions for competition entries, presenting, all those sorts of things. One, how many submissions are we talking? And two, how on earth do you go about sifting who you want there at any particular conference?
I'll maybe jump on this one as the person who begins the sifting. So we are excited. We launched a new website and we collect everything through our website, and that's where it all starts. So people reach out to us, and sometimes we'll have people email, like, hey, I'm interested in this, blah, 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 get some information. But for the most part, everyone just fills out an application. And one of the great things about IWBC is that we like to have a lot of eyes on everything we do. So there's never like the one person who, sometimes I get emails like, oh, I hope you consider. I'm like, thanks for sending this lovely email to me, but I have no say in this. Mm-hmm. I think your proposal is amazing, but I'm just going to send it on to the committee. And that's what happens. So I gather them up and we sent them to the committee, which had our wonderful hosts on it. And I have no idea. Stacie's going to have to talk about this, how they narrowed it down. There were so many. I don't know that I can give you a number, but I can tell you it was a lot. A lot. And, it's just a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of time going through. And the nice thing is that, we try to get everyone we can in. So you're going to see when I release the schedule in not too long that it is jam-packed. We were able to accept so many people, which is why all of our Instagram feeds are blowing up. Mm-hmm. So in terms of presenters, that's kind of how the process works. And then I send out an email to people, which is one of my favorite parts because you get the excitement. And as I'm sending out these emails, I'm seeing like, oh, this is interesting. Like, oh, I want to hear this. Like, oh, I'm glad this person is in, So it's really fun for me to get to see that part of the process. And then competitions are kind of a whole nother side. You asked who gets to compete. I got to be honest, this is something that like keeps me up at night because I want to have as many people come as possible. And so I can't tell you how many meetings our competition committee has of like, how do we squeeze in another person? One of Susan's biggest missions when she started the competition, and something that I think is so amazing, is that no one is excluded from it. So there's no pre-screening round. If you want to compete, you're welcome to come compete, which has been amazing for many, many years because anyone could just come. You get the feedback, you get the experience of being there, the practice of taking an audition, whether it's a mock audition or a solo or ensemble as we now have. But we've gotten so big that now we're to the point that I've been putting all over social media and on the emails like, apply early. We don't have that many spots, I promise. Like if you want to compete, be on top of stuff because we don't want to turn people away. But I do think we did have to for a couple for ASU, and with Texas being saturated, I think we will this year. So the way that works is we just have a certain number of people. This is the amount of pianists and rooms and blocks of time in that room and judges. It's like a 5-dimensional puzzle. I think when you look at it, you don't realize how complicated it is until, I'm talking to the competition coordinator and say, hey, what do you think about just like, can we just add some more bass trombonists? Like, I think we'll have a lot of bass trombonists. And as a trombonist, of course, I'm going to push for that. And then we're like, oh, wait a second. Like, if we do that, we have to move this and this. And it's a lot more complicated than you think. So it means it's just going to be first come, first serve. The people that apply early get to compete. There's no pre-screening. There's no people turned away. There's no application or resume. So it really is in that spirit of accessibility and inclusivity. It's just whoever wants to can come compete. We're not turning anyone away.
Amazing. So Stacie, we're going to come to you then. How on earth are you narrowing stuff down?
As part of the committee, looking through all of the applications, I don't know the total number of applicants, and they were in a variety of categories too, because we had people who wanted to give presentations, like 30-minute presentations about a topic. We had people who wanted to give full recitals. We had people applying to be on Barbara York tribute recital. We had people applying to be on, I think it was new this go around, is the professor's recital. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And then also, as Lauren mentioned, the group recital, which was non-topical, but just where you could be sharing a recital with other people. And I can tell you that we went through the submissions multiple times. We did a first pass through where, the ones that's in both performance and in lecture or presentation, the ones that like really clearly stood out as this is extremely on topic, this person's an expert, this is a really well written abstract and application, those got kind of like an immediate green light. Then I remember one evening sitting down for just like 3 or 4 hours straight on my own and going back and rereading I'm a little overly thorough, so rereading everyone because they were so interesting and so good, and I felt myself being impressed by a lot of what people are bringing to the table from their unique perspectives. And this includes people who are professional musicians, people who are professional academic teachers and musicians, people who are on their way to becoming professional, maybe they're graduate students, all sorts of backgrounds, or military musicians as well, which falls into the professional musician category. And so individually, we all went through these. We listened to a lot of recordings together. That is sometimes tricky because IWC promotes so many commissions or new musics. Sometimes when somebody applies to perform, they don't have the piece that they want to perform because it's not written yet. So they have the composer, and we know the composer's background, and we can listen to samples of their music, and then we can also listen to samples of the performer performing. But there is sometimes a little bit of like, okay, we think this person and this team is going to be a good combination. So that might be a question people have too, like how can I apply to perform when I don't have the music yet because we're writing it? And yes, absolutely. And we got a lot of that this year. I haven't been on the committee before for deciding, but the other things that we tried to keep in mind was this year has a bit of a focus of wellness, health and wellness. So things that were along that vein, there's always the ones that I've been to, some sort of like Alexander technique or meditation or performance anxiety type things. We have more like physical wellness involved as well. So without trying to duplicate anything, we wanted to make sure that we were prioritizing the things that fit the theme, as well as often prioritizing female composers or emerging composers or other like on historically underrepresented composers. Those would get prioritized. And even there's one instance where most of the person's program that they proposed to play looked good, but then there was sort of like a more like traditional staple repertoire that from 200 years ago, and we're like, oh well, we want to invite this person, but this feels like you could do this at a different convention. And so I think, Lauren, you probably reached out to this person like, oh, would you mind switching to something like that kind of fits our theme? And I think they were like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we had actually a handful of people that either like, hey, we really want to invite you, but this is just a little too long for the program that you recommended, or we'd love to see more diversity and inclusion initiatives in your proposal, or whatever you're doing. Are you interested in making this small adjustment? And people were just so excited about it, which I think was really encouraging, that there was no back and forth, no backlash, just, yes, we're so excited. Here's a piece that I already had in mind and would love to play. So that was really, really cool to see that I think even just looking back at my career, I think in the past couple of years, we wouldn't have seen these things be an option. If maybe like 5 years ago, I had emailed someone and said like, hey, can you swap out for a piece by a historically marginalized composer on this recital? It needs to be 3 minutes. Like that would have been that person like taking some time to look it up. But I just love that this is something that we're moving towards as a brass community and society in general, being more inclusive. And I was really excited to see how easy of a yes it was when these emails came back.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of those instances. And as inclusive as we are, we wanted to include as many as we could. We have a lot of facilities here at UNT. It is a big college of music. So we have 3 performing venues like operating pretty much constantly during the day when it's happening. So we will be squeezing as much as we can in. And that's also another reason for having 30-minute presentations versus, a full-blown hour. We can get more variety in, people can move around and hear more. So we did try to invite as many people as possible. Of course, we are also trying to have quality really high. So while we are being inclusive, I don't want to send the message that like, somebody, my neighbor plays a ukulele and she wrote a song. And no, it's not just, there are some standards. And so we did listen to recordings and, okay, this person maybe not ready yet for what we have going on. Because we do want to make sure people are paying money, they're coming here. We want them to have an outstanding experience.
Yeah, I love that it sounds like everyone's being very flexible and very open-minded. And sort of to comment on something, Lauren, that you said, I think even in my professional career experience. Yeah, I graduated from college 8 years ago. I think even 8 years ago, if I'd suggested to somebody that we needed to make a flexible change in our program, there would have been a lot more of a wall to get over there than there is nowadays. So that's super exciting. And I also love that there's this focus on wellness. I think after the how has it been nearly 2 years? But the nearly 2 years that we've had of pandemic hell, I think it's really important to touch on wellness and health, well-being, all of those, like, please remember you're a human topics, which I love and we love here on the podcast very much. So I am curious then, is there something that each of you are particularly looking forward to with this year's conference, or I'm kind of asked two questions here, sorry. Is there a highlight from being involved with the IWBC? I ask such hard questions, everyone's stuck.
I'll go first because I have one, and it took me, 2 seconds. So this is from Arizona State. So of course there's lots of things, as you're hearing, that we're looking forward to about UNT as well. But the highlight for me of what, when I think of what's the IWBC, I'm always going to remember that we had a concert with the Athena Brass Band, which many of you might know was just at Midwest. So shout out to the Athena Brass Band. Representing that, for some of you who don't know, is an American British-style brass band composed of all people who identify as female, and that it was founded by Laura Lineberger, who did her career in the United States Army Band, as a way to showcase the possibilities. Not that we want to represent, only women or only men. I think most of us feel like the mix is what we're after, but sometimes it's a surprise to see how good a group can sound. And so that's the Athena mission, to kind of show the possibilities. And Athena was just at Midwest, and Athena often plays at the IWBC. That is an evening concert, and we set up a joint performance with United Sound. United Sound is a group that is run by a wonderful friend of mine, Julie Patterson-Duty, and she has a spirited group. It's a nonprofit that helps differently abled students be able to participate in band and orchestra. And it uses a buddy system. So there is a musician, and then there is a musician buddy, and the buddy will help in whatever way, maybe pointing to the notes or whatever that student needs. Another aspect of what they do is they rewrite each individual part for each individual musician. So if you're a trombonist and you are really going to be able to nail only the first, second, and third positions, then they just write the part over. So it takes a lot of labor. It's very much a labor of love. So the Athena Brass Band had a side-by-side where the United Sound students came out on stage to sit with us and perform. And it was so meaningful because there I am back in the basses. And we arched them in the middle, and their parents came. This was, of course, in Tempe, and so these are local students to the Phoenix area. Their parents came, and they were all in a particular section in the hall, and they're filming and taking pictures, and it was like their kids in a band concert, because their kid had never really been welcome in a band concert before. But they're at the IWBC, and it's different here. And so United Sound and the Athena Brass Band playing together, that will just be one of the most meaningful things I have ever done. And seeing those parents just at a band concert, which is something many parents might take for granted, but in the situation with ability, sometimes it's been denied. And so United Sound with the Athena Brass Band is going to be my highlight forever.
Very sweet. Oh, that's so nice. Who wants to go next? I have nothing else to say.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So for me, IWBC is and aside from it being a different conference, because it's amazing, and I can say that all day. For me personally, it's a very different conference than like this summer when I went to the Trombone Festival, because I am the general manager, which means that I am not, hanging out, drinking coffee, watching leisurely throughout the day. I am running around like a chicken with my head cut off, being my very type A personality, wanting things to be perfect. So for me, I think anytime I get to glimpse a moment of performance or presentation is amazing. But ultimately, I think the highlight for me at the past conference, and what I'm looking forward to the most with this upcoming one, is just being around people, especially coming out of this COVID time when we've been quarantining, and just like there's these people I interact with all the time on email, and we get to be friends just from like writing a nice signature, right? And I haven't, I don't see them until the conference. Or for example, my brass quintet, we've been doing all this kind of stuff and collaborating online. We still have not met in person, and IWBC will be our second in-person performance ever. We're all sharing this giant Airbnb. It's going to be so fun. I can't wait. And I already warned them I will be crazy and not sleeping and all this stuff, but I can't wait to see them and, sit next to a person playing music. So I think that for me is, I think it's special for a lot of people being around an environment of supportive colleagues and friends. But for me, it's just extra special because I feel like in some way I get to interact with every single person who comes, because I see their application come in, I process it, I, communicate with people. So it's really special to get to put faces and physical in-person connection with the emails and the spreadsheets.
Yeah, nice.
And for me, I think what I am most interested in is, at this point, I would say that I'm maybe mid-career in my career. I'm not a newbie, and I hope that I have a lot more left in me as well. But based on the applications, based on the amount of just awakening and understanding of possibilities, unrealized and future potential that the organization has, and as Joanna said, classical music scene has changed, is changing, and we haven't met since 2019, right? So it will have been 3 years. So much has happened, not just COVID, but the whole summer of 2020, and sort of an understanding and waking up of how we need to do better in inclusivity. And I guess I'm really excited because I'm mid-career. I think there are going to be a lot of new younger career people and students attending the IWBC, and they will be competing and presenting and performing and just attending. And I think that they are going to bring sort of a pent-up energy to the conference. I really think it's going to have, I'm hoping it will have a very vibrant and sort of celebratory feeling, because not just are we coming out of COVID, as Lauren said, but so much has happened since then. And I loved the 2019 IWBC at Arizona State. I loved the venue, I loved the performances, I liked everything about it, but I'm still hoping this will feel like another new amazing thing.
Yeah, and the more I do this podcast, the more I realize that, what happens if you shut creative people away for the best part of 2 years is that they come bursting out of the other end, not even just with excitement, but with like new ideas and just general creativity. And so you put them all in one place again, they can only be interesting things. I am going to answer my own question, which is a stupid thing that I sometimes do on the podcast. I realize I'm not here to ask myself questions. I have plenty of other time to do that. The thing that I am most excited about is I was just looking at, like I said, I live in Instagram. And so when I was looking at all of these people that had been accepted to present in one way or another, and then I matched with those people with the list of guests I had, I realized how many people I'm going to be able to meet in person. But more importantly, the thing that I was most excited about was I get to see those people do like their thing. So, getting to see Brianne talk about wellness, and getting to meet and see Ashley and Carrie talk about diversity, and see Calypsis and see Athena, and all these things that like have been making up my like when I can leave the UK bucket list again, is like, please, people, give me money for this fundraiser so I can go. Remember, that's why we're here. Anyway, onwards. So if anyone is still on the fence about attending after they've heard all of this, let's do a real full elevator pitch. Why do they need to go? I don't know how they'd have gotten this far in and not know why, but what else can we tell them about why they need to come and take part?
I'll jump in again. This is Stacie. I feel so grateful to have the job that I have. It is a bigger job than I ever thought I would get in my life, and I try to live up to it all the time. And I really do credit the growth that I had and the connections that I had through IWBC. The first one I went to was the summer after I graduated with my doctorate. And of course, I did a lot of work before that, but there was so much support. When Ava Ordman called me for the next two after that, when Ava Ordman said, hey, we need another horn player for Monarch. Would you play? Oh my God, like, of course I want to play in Monarch Brass. Like, these things, they're cumulative. And so if you are looking to make a career as a performer or teacher in the brass world, this is such a great way to build a scaffolding of support and connections. Professionally, it's a great way, besides all the fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. Who's going next?
Joanna is so eloquent, so I don't want to follow her. And Stacie was amazing, so I'm just gonna sandwich myself in between, and then we can just edit theirs with priority. But I've said so much, and I think I do this all the time. Like anything you see on social media marketing the conference is me, and it's my honest, true excitement about what's happening because I really believe in this mission. I believe in this organization, and so all the excitement is very genuine. And I think maybe something we haven't touched on too much is the guest artists. So I think maybe one of the things that's so special about the conference is that not only do you get to hear so many incredible musicians and ensembles, but you'll get to interact with them. There'll be master classes, they'll be walking the halls, there'll be opportunities. We have a reception that's like specifically designed to get people in the same room together and get to interact with people who are maybe they're idols in the field or people they really want to meet or ask for some advice. So I think looking at the evening concerts, we've got these amazing groups. We already mentioned Monarch and Athena. We also have a jazz night featuring the 1 o'clock lab band, which as a jazz trombonist I'm super excited about. We have a really cool
might be
surprise.
The 2 o'clock.
Oh, maybe 2 o'clock. Never mind. Yeah. It'll be some sort of time, and it will be great. My bad for that. But we do have a surprise announcement coming soon about an opener for that is also super exciting and brings the community in. So we're excited about that. We have the Lone Star Wind Orchestra who's going to be there. Another local ensemble. We always try to highlight local groups. Again, like we want to support the musicians that are there. And our guest artists are incredible. And the last... In terms of like all the solos and recitals, and the last ensemble I want to talk about I'm so excited about, and it's the Chromatic Brass Collective. I'm on the advisory board for this organization. I know it's such a powerhouse of amazing musicians and people with a powerful mission, and we're just so excited to be able to support them at IWBC and have a featured spot and lots of recitals and performances. And I could go on for a while, but I think just in general, if you were on the fence, if you weren't sure if there would be something there for you, I can promise that there is. Even if it's just sitting in recitals, hearing new music by amazing people, that'll be enough to fill like years worth of your musical enrichment.
Absolutely. And I'll just throw in case you weren't fully convinced yet, you can also shop because there are exhibits. You could buy a tuba. You could buy trombone music. You could buy music by a diverse set of composers that can flesh out your concerts for 2022 and 2023. We do have a huge group of exhibitors, some of whom have been loyal to us for many, many years, who come every time. Again, instruments, mouthpieces, mutes, every possible thing. Stacie is organizing her spaces with spreadsheets for that, of course. And so, yeah, that's the least thing we all think of course, because we're so used to seeing exhibitors, but let's just stop and say thanks to them, too, because they do help us support all of the conference events by getting those spaces and being there and being a draw. So, yeah, go buy a tuba.
Can you imagine if I got back off my plane coming back the other way and I just bought a tuba? It was like, yeah, thank you for funding my trip out there, folks, but I used the remaining money to buy a tuba. Anyway, you can help me fulfill that dream.
Can I tell a tuba story fast? So
yeah,
this is we're all three of us behind the scenes, right? And so this is one of those leadership. Stacie mentioned that one of the things that you do any work with nonprofit is a great way to develop your own leadership, right? This is wherever you are in your career, you can serve others so that you can develop yourself. So the leadership story about tubas and exhibits that I have is this will remain nameless, but at an event sometime at an event I was taken aside with some worry because a pallet of tubas was missing. A pallet of tubas. The entire shipment of tubas was missing. And it was supposed to have been delivered to X spot. No tubas arrived, and the delivery people, we dropped it off. These like, I don't even know how many tubas fit on a pallet, but like a lot. all of the tubas. And so, of course, they have to be at some shipping warehouse somewhere on campus, right? Like, you can't just hide a pallet of tubas. But there was this whispered conversation, everybody trying to act natural in the corner of a reception where we were discussing what we were going to do about these missing 30 tubas and how we were going to pay for them if we couldn't find them. So the pallet of tubas was restored. But it was just that I will always think of that when I think of exhibits, because how could you lose pallets of tubas, like these huge shipments of tubas anyway? So when you're a leader in a nonprofit setting, this is a way for you to really develop yourself. So we haven't maybe touched on that yet in this conversation too. It doesn't have to be the IWBC. It can be anything, but those of us in the field that are, like everyone here, that are giving back in some way, we do this because we feel that makes that's how we're going to make our mark. We've been given it. Stacie, you alluded to this. It's been given to us, and then we need to give back. And there's that beautiful circle there. For somebody this time at Stacie's home, it's going to be their very first ever IWBC. And then there's going to be some people there that have been to every one. So it's a wonderful circle, and I love that about this process.
Amazing. And is there anything that we yet haven't talked about or given space to that we should remember to talk about? I.e., are there any questions that I forgot to write down? Write down, folks. It's nearly Christmas. That's why the sequins are here. My brain is shutting down, ready for Christmas. Are there any questions I have forgotten to ask, or anything that we should have remembered to talk about?
I have one thing. I'd like, Stacie, would you just tell us a little bit about the area around UNT and like what it's like there for people who've never been, and what kinds of things are around?
Sure. I imagine, first of all, you'll probably be so busy at the conference that you'll mostly be on campus. But UNT is in Denton, Texas, which is considered part of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. This area is one of the fastest growing areas of the country. I think 17 of the biggest cities in Texas are in DFW area, and many of them are like biggest growing cities in the country. So it's you could go to Dallas or Fort Worth while you're here, but we want you to stay and go to the concerts at IWBC. Denton itself is sort of like an upper northern point of the triangle of DFW, and while it is also booming in terms of growth, it still has like a typical college town feel, and there's a downtown courthouse with a whole bunch of cool little shops and bars, and you could easily do a pretty successful bar crawl around the courthouse if you feel inclined to do that. And it has a very laid back, chill vibe. I am not from the South or from Texas. I'm from Iowa in the upper Midwest, and the vibe of people down here is very happy. It's very sunny most of the time. People are very polite and friendly and casual. So any of the staff at UNT that you might interact with will also be like that. They are very efficient and helpful and friendly. Let's see. A little bit about UNT itself. We claim to be the largest public college music program in the country. There's over 1,600 music majors at UNT, which is the size of some of the small towns in Iowa near where I grew up. A whole town worth of college music majors. And so we do, I think I just watched a video from our dean yesterday, and I think he mentioned that we have 10 music buildings. Maybe, I don't know. So we do have the College of Music building is actually an entire city block on the campus, and within the music building we have 3 performing centers, a big recital hall, a medium recital hall, and a smaller lecture recital hall, and then we have our huge performing arts center where all of our evening concerts will be held, and it's really a wonderful facility. So yeah, like it's a thriving music program. It's 75th anniversary of their jazz studies major, just celebrating this year. And we do have a performing arts health clinic. I believe Amy Cherry's doing a little bit of research on that right now. There's a lot going on here, so it's exciting. And also we're in Texas, which is like a hub of music education. The Texas music programs are crazy. There's a high school near here that has like an 800 person marching band every year. I mean, it's nuts. So yeah, it's nuts. And so we're hoping to draw in a lot of these sort of Texas educators and musicians as well.
I hope
That is a
everyone
lot
just
of
saw my
information.
face there. Like an 800 strong marching band. That is more people than was at my entire conservatoire. 4 years of undergrad, 2 years of postgrad. We had 600 students tops. That was my entire university in one music building, one academic building, one music building, and that was it. So this is just. Please, everybody, look after the tiny Brit when she comes across. She will be overwhelmed to the max. Anyway, sorry, Lauren, I cut you off. You were going to say something.
No, I love it. I love it so much. I would just like to talk a little bit about the competitions because I think not everyone understands everything that's happening. So just a brief sort of overview. So we have multiple different kind of strains of competition, to call it that. So we have the solo competition, which is for every brass instrument. We have 2 levels, so 2 different age groups. So every single person can do it, no matter your age, because you fall into 1 or 2 categories. There's no top age cutoff. It is open to everyone, period, like not just women. Anyone can compete. And every brass instrument, and the prizes are huge. So we give out over $40,000 in cash prizes. There are not that many competitions that still do cash prizes, and we do. So if you win, you're looking at more than $5,000 for a competition. And again, there's limited spots. So when we're looking at like, your cost to like, well, your ratio there of like winning, like compete. It's great. We also have the Ensemble Competition, and this is really cool. Ginger Turner Ensemble Competition is the name of it, and it's for like instrument ensembles. So, we have a lot of things that are maybe for brass quintets or, mixed chamber, but this is really cool because you can bring your horn quartets. Tuba euphonium is considered a like instrument ensemble, so tuba euphonium quartets or low brass ensembles. For Melissa and I, anything trombone, quartets, ensembles, and we're actually, with UNT being such a powerhouse of trombone, we're doing some commissions for that as well and competitions. So that's a whole nother thing. And then we also have our mock auditions. So for those, we have 2 types. We have the mock orchestral audition and we have the mock military band. And so for those, we really try to run it like you would get in the real world, except you're going to get feedback and you're going to win money. And if you win in that as well. So there's going to be different rounds of those. And again, it's orchestra doesn't have euphonium, but euphonium gets in band, so it's for all brass instruments in there as well, which is great. And then we also have 2 composition competitions. One is new this year, so the first one already closed, and that's our traditional composition competition. This one, as I mentioned before, is for trombone ensemble. And we also have an emerging composer competition that's new this year and is a partnership with Rising Tide Music Press. So there's so much going on. There's so many opportunities for growth and enrichment and for people to compete. And if you're looking to save some money, if you do the math, if you do a mock competition, it's cheaper than just paying to be a student. So there's your little like insider perspective. Look into the competitions. They're great ways to, to grow and learn and meet new people and experience new things. So I think they're really worthwhile. And if anyone ever has any questions, send us an email and we will tell you all about the competitions.
Yeah, I mean, if nobody else is convinced about going, I am very convinced. Please help me go there. So my last question before I let you all go, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, is for anyone that can't make it to the conference and wants to give IWBC some support, how can they do that?
I'll start and then we can tag team that too. Obviously, there's a lot of ways that people who want to see small dollars of support go to work can do so. There's individual scholarships in the names and memory of people. All of this is on our website. Lauren mentioned we had a beautiful new website unroll here during the time between our 2019 conference and this 2022 event. And on the website, there's a way to see about giving. Again, becoming a member is very easy there as well. And in addition to supporting the events at the conference, you also become, you're going to get that newsletter in the mail, which is amazing. And that is Stacie's colleague in the executive editor position now, Rachel. So she's doing a beautiful job. We have one coming out in January, the winter newsletter. So our website is the hub for all things IWBC, where you can donate to some of the different scholarships. You can see the different areas and what might look good to you. Again, I mentioned at the beginning that there's the historical side to this, and we do some work there as well. And anybody also interested in volunteering, that's something that we very much value, that giving people a chance to network and meet at all stages of the career through volunteering as well as attending. So, Lauren, go ahead and add your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think volunteers, huge thing. Even if you can't go to the conference, you can still volunteer. There are all kinds of other things. As Joanna mentioned, we do a lot of historical research. So a lot of volunteers, they sort of find themselves, maybe they're students and they're already researching something they're interested in and it applies to us. We have a couple actually ongoing current volunteers who are doing research. One of them has been helping post some of the amazing Monday Mentor Series posts that you've been seeing because she's doing that research in her studies. And so there's a really nice correlation there. So volunteers are amazing. This is I believe the first time that we're accepting volunteers in advance for applications. So you'll know before you apply to go to the conference if you're going to have free registration or half registration. We have 2 levels depending on how much time you want to commit, which again, like another plug, you can come and it will be free. You just have to volunteer. So that's on our website, as Joanna mentioned. Another big thing I'd like to say, maybe you can't come, maybe you have no money and no time, but you can still help us and support us by spreading the word. We like to think because in our bubbles, everyone knows about us and what we're doing because all of our friends have similar interests of diversity and inclusion and, loving the brass community, but there are so many people that haven't heard of us. Joanna introduced me to IWBC when I was a student and not a freshman. I was a master's student before I heard of this organization, and it would have made a huge difference in my career to have heard about it earlier. So first of all, thank you, Joanna, for changing my life. And that happens to so many of us. So I think just please help us spread the word. You don't even need to just recruit for our conference for us, but just tell people that we exist. Tell your students. You never know how much of a difference it could make in the lives, especially of female brass students, to see that this community exists and find that support. But also the conference is amazing, open to anyone. So, tell your students about it, tell your colleagues, tell your high school band directors, whoever it is. I think err on the side of helping us spread the word because people can always be like, nah, it's not for me, but they're wrong. So it's for everyone. So just, you can volunteer, you can help support what we're doing with money, or you can just give us a little of your time. Clicking forward on an email takes a millisecond. So we appreciate people's help in that way as well.
Amazing. Well, folks, I'm going to let us wrap up there, but thank you so much for giving me your time today. Thank you for everything you're doing for IWBC. Folks, please remember the whole point of this 12 hours of absolute madness in my life, 12 hours today, it's been many, many weeks in the planning with lots of generous people giving their time for free, is to try to help me go to this amazing event, take the podcast there and meet all these wonderful people. So every penny counts, and thank you so much, folks, for joining me today.